Between Generosity and Parsimony, Paradoxes of the Tents on the Road to Nairyah. A narrative of desert encounters and family traits. The protagonist of our story, may God bestow mercy upon his soul, was a man named Muhammad al-Harbi. Muhammad recounts, approximately 50 years ago, I possessed a small vehicle which I used to transport people, camels, or furniture for a modest fare. On one such occasion, I was hired to carry a load of furniture from the region of Al-Qasim to Nairyah. I set out from Al-Qasim, and while on the road, I spotted a man standing on the right side of the path, signaling with his hand. My car lacked air conditioning, so the windows were flung wide to catch whatever breeze the desert offered. Muhammad pulled over and asked the man, "What is it that you seek?" The man, whose name was Ibrahim, replied, "Do you have any water to spare?" Muhammad answered, "Indeed, I have water with me," and he provided him with a drink. Ibrahim then inquired, "Whither are you bound?" Muhammad replied, "To Nairyah." Ibrahim pleaded, "Take me with you." Muhammad welcomed him warmly, saying, "Yes, please, climb in." Now, Muhammad had placed his thermos of coffee and his supply of food on the passenger seat beside him. Fearing that Ibrahim would not be able to sit comfortably, he moved the coffee and food, securing them with ropes atop the car amidst the furniture. Then, they set off together. As the shadows of evening began to stretch across the sand, Muhammad suggested, "Let us halt in this flat expanse to take our rest," for the road in those days was not yet paved with asphalt. After they had stopped and spread their bedding upon the earth, Muhammad climbed atop the vehicle to retrieve the food and tea. To his dismay, he found they had vanished. The rope had snapped during the journey. Muhammad turned to Ibrahim and said, "Let us sleep, and tomorrow, God willing, we shall find our breakfast at the first dwelling we encounter." Muhammad felt certain that whoever they met would invite them to share a meal, as was the sacred custom of the land. Muhammad and Ibrahim slept and rose the following day in time for the far prayer. After they had prayed, they mounted the car and continued their journey. After driving a short distance, they spotted a tent. They stopped, and there stood a man at the threshold. They greeted him, saying, "Peace be upon you," but though the man returned the greeting, he offered no word of welcome. They drew closer, hoping he might invite them to break their fast, yet he remained silent. They feasted on hope, pretending they were searching for a specific man, but the owner of the tent simply muttered, "I do not know him." From within the tent, they heard the voice of the man's wife urging him, "Invite them for breakfast," but her husband ignored her plea, remaining stubbornly silent. Ibrahim whispered to Muhammad, "The opportunity has passed him by," meaning that the beautiful virtue of honoring guests was a treasure this man had chosen to cast away. Muhammad and Ibrahim returned to the car and drove for about a kilometer until they encountered a second tent. As they stopped, the owner greeted them with exuberant warmth, exclaiming, "Welcome. 1,000 welcomes. Please come inside." They sat before the tent, and the host began to kindle a fire to prepare coffee, serving it with some dates. However, the dates were dusted with sand. The host took them and said to his wife, "Clean these dates or bring us others," but his wife did not utter a word. He repeated his request, yet she remained silent and unmoving, for the wife was a woman of parsimonious spirit and had no desire to honor the strangers. The host was forced to go inside and fetch clean dates himself. While he was within the tent, Muhammad and Ibrahim whispered to one another, "Would that this generous host had been wed to the wife of the first man, the miser, for she was noble and kind. And would that the first miserly host had been wed to this man's wife, for she is as stingy as he." They both shared a quiet laugh at the irony of life's pairings. When the man returned with the clean dates, he asked them, "What is it that has brought this laughter to your lips?" They recounted to him the ordeal they had faced at the first tent and the contrast in the wife's behavior. The man looked at them and revealed a startling truth. "The reality of the matter is that my parsimonious wife is the sister of that miserly man in the first tent, and his generous wife is my own sister." Muhammad and Ibrahim were struck with wonder, concluding, "Indeed, generosity is a trait one is sometimes born with, and other times it is the fruit of one's upbringing since childhood. For a man or a woman may be born into the world with a heart either closed by stinginess or opened wide by grace. Lessons and insights derived from the story. The chivalry of the traveler. This was embodied in Muhammad al-Harbai's willingness to stop for a stranger, Ibrahim, and provide him a seat despite the cramped space, even prioritizing his guest's comfort over his own essential supplies. Honoring the guest as an ancestral virtue, the story highlights the stark contrast between those who cling to the noble Arab and Islamic traditions of hospitality, the second host and the first wife, and those who abandon them. The influence of heredity and environment. The conclusion proves that character traits, such as parsimony or generosity, are often deeply rooted in families. The brother and sister of one house shared the same stinginess, while the siblings of the other shared the same nobility. The woman as a partner in generosity. The story illustrates that a wife's generosity can sometimes mask her husband's miserliness and vice versa, but the perfection of a home is only achieved when both parties agree on the virtue of giving. Maintaining goodwill toward others. Despite losing his food, Muhammad al-Harbai remained optimistic, trusting that people's homes would be open and that the customs of the villages and the desert, to feed and welcome the traveler, would prevail. Patience in adversity. The two travelers dealt calmly with the loss of their provisions without complaint or resentment, continuing their path with dignity and faith in a favorable outcome. If you enjoyed the story, support us by liking and subscribing to the channel to see more.